You agreed with my criticisms throughout the first half of this video and want more. You should know that most of the first half of this video is basically a summary of Joseph Anderson's video on
There's many humor and jokes on here. If we go over here, we'll find a bar named Jizzy Jim. Like Jizz, like
Okay, Conrad and Greg, what the fuck?
What does it really mean to be a good game critic? It's easy to make fun of video game critics for having shitty takes, but in retrospect, being a good critic doesn't mean having good opinions. It means being good at expressing those opinions. The way you or any other random guy felt about a game does not hold any more or less value than how a professional game critic did. Again, that's not their job. Being descriptive can also help convince other people to see a game in a light that they might have not seen it in before. Which is what I consider another integral part of what critics should do in order for their work to have actual impact or genuine substance. Of course, I'm not saying that the whole point is to try to pull as many people as you can onto your side. Just that approaches like this leave an opportunity for more interesting, more open-minded discussions. Reviews should be like engaging in an argument between you and, well, nobody. You look at a damn statement like too much water and sure, it is worthy to be made fun of, but at the same time, you can get a decent enough picture of what the reviewer was actually trying to convey by earlier things said in the video. She explained that the water was an issue due to it making the traversal take longer as well as it filled a bunch of areas with water-based Pokemon.
You also have to navigate many bodies of water, which makes much of the late game incredibly tedious. It's not a new complaint, but the Hoenn region is still imbalanced type-wise, heavily favoring water Pokemon,
resulting in a lack of variety. Now, I can't say for sure since I haven't played the game, but to me, these seem like fair points. The only problem being that at the end, she decided to express this with a blatant, non-descriptive statement, too much water. She didn't appear to have a bad opinion, she just failed to properly explain it. Another thing worth mentioning is the importance of establishing where you're coming from. Your perspective is important, it solidates your general approach and bias before going through a game. You look at a game like Undertale and you see a certain amount of jokes that make you go, yeah, this was written by someone who came from the Homestuck community. Now, if you dislike that type of writing, that's fine, but you're probably already aware that there are a lot of people who do enjoy it. So it's important to ask yourself the question, do I think this thing is bad or is it just not for me? Of course, this is touching the topic of subjectivity and it's a bit of a messy one depending on what you're discussing. There aren't a lot of things games can do that are objectively bad and people have their own sorts of opinions. There are people who think Shadow the Hedgehog is a good game for crying out loud. So, where does this rule apply, where you have to specify what arguments are just your own opinions? Well, as a great man, one of the most worshipped deities at the nice opinion that a YouTuber gave it to your church, Joseph Anderson once said, subjectivity is implied. Even if you say that something is objectively bad, people can still tell that you're incorrect and that it's just your opinion. At the same time though, I feel like the sentences, this is bad and I think this is bad, give off different impressions of how big of a deal you make out your point to be. Like I explained with the Undertale writing example, you can establish that you dislike something while also expressing your opinionatedness? That's not a real fucking word. You can establish that you dislike something while also describing your opinionatedness. Letting others know how even though you felt that specific way about something, they still have high enough chances of not sharing that same sentiment if they were to give the game a shot. To summarize, I feel like some things are more subjective than others. even if that might not make sense considering the word's definition, it's good to understand what most people would think about a certain element and if you disagree with it. Both of these emphasize that these are just your personal feelings and also focus on building a stronger case to support your claims if it comes to that specific area. And now that we have discussed what at least I consider to be a good game critic, I think that we can get into the real tasty subject of this topic, that of which being the rules. You wouldn't trust a game critic that hasn't finished the game, would you? You wouldn't trust a critic who beat the game on easy mode, right? The rules describe these sets of requirements, ones that, if not fulfilled, can end up making a lot of people disregard the review entirely despite its contents. Where things get messy though is when you start considering the rules tied to specific games. Oh, you use that one build in Dark Souls when that build in Dark Souls makes Dark Souls too easy, so your review of Dark Souls is stupid. You use the chaser gun in Cuphead? I don't know. It's these decisions and playstyles that a lot of people might say prevent you from receiving the proper experience. If you want to bear those in mind, then I feel like you'd be required to do a little bit of research on the beliefs of the game's community or just have somewhat decent judgment for these things. Video games are a much more interactive form of media. If you're a movie reviewer, you just have to watch the movie to the end. If you're discussing books, you just have to read them. But with games, there is a much more variant display of options if it comes to how you approach them. Now, you might argue against that. You might say that, well, if a game puts me in an arena with a boss, then I only have one option and it's to kill him, but that's not entirely true. Sure, you could kill the boss, but you could also run into a corner until the boss kills you. It's an exaggerated example, but I still feel like it displays well just how much control you have over your own experience rather than the game you're playing. For this perfect experience you're aiming for, I believe that one thing is absolutely crucial: understanding the intentions of the developers. With a game like Punch-Out, you can figure out that it's one of those games where you are meant to lose multiple times due to you not fully understanding the opponent's behavior and learning them further and further the more you tries you do. It will be easy to just criticize Punch-Out and say that it doesn't do a good job at telegraphing what each move is going to do, but that doesn't fully work as an argument because that's how the game is supposed to be. It's about trial and error rather than just reaction speed. Back to the topic of the rules. Although I can see them as a nice precedent that ensures for you to go through a better experience, I also think that the more niche we get with them, the dumber things become. There exists a line between ensuring a more enjoyable experience and just following the quote-unquote gamer code or whatever you wanna call it. Because of this, whenever someone offers you advice of this sort, you'd have to decide whether or not it's someone who's actually trying to be helpful, or that one guy who uses Cheetos body wash and when asked about it he says that he's doing it ironically because it's funny. The rules might be a bit pointless in general too. Think about someone who you consider to be a good reviewer. If they were to deliver a critique on a game while throwing some rules out of the window, for example, let's say playing on easy mode, would you say that the person you chose would still come out with a decent enough overview that's comparable to their other works? Because I believe chances are that they would. Your experience matters, but at the end of the day, the thing that will always matter more is the writing process that comes after.
I couldn't see the stage.
We already established that the very precedent for posting a review is playing the game until the end, but what about side content? Sure, you can argue that it's optional, so it's not necessary, but given a lot of side missions tell their own little stories, there are bound to be some that the game's community might tell you you must see. I'm a Yakuza fan, and I must admit, I'd feel pretty disappointed if someone reviewed Yakuza 0 without doing any of the sub-stories, because they're actually one of the better aspects of the game. It has a lot of sub-stories though, so you might ask yourself, how many of them should you do? And then you look at other games and the optional content they provide, and you see the jungle that they make. Side missions, alternative routes, alternative scenes, customizable builds that can change the way you play the whole game. And what if you get the normal ending in Hollow Knight instead of the true one? Does that count? Are you still eligible to make and upload a review without meeting these conditions? This becomes a rather tricky topic because on one hand, yes, I do wanna say that worrying about stuff can get out of hand, and so the solution is to just let loose and not let these concerns get to your head, but on the other hand, god damn it, no, you're not finishing the game until you see the man-baby cutscene, end of story. Reviewers who had completed a large amount of a game simply seem more trustworthy. That is, unless you already know them and you might already know that you don't really fuck with their work in general. Which further shows that at the end of the day, your work ethic and expressiveness are far more superior than your experience with a game. I can go further on about this, but the points I have in relation to this topic can actually be more effectively used in the overall conclusion of this video, so let's just get to it already. I think you should go a bit out of your way if it comes to certain games. As a recent example, I decided to play through the Metal Gear Solid series, and while I was an hour in Metal Gear Solid 2, I intended to give up on it. I thought that it simply wasn't a game made for me, and I wanted to just watch someone else play it instead. However, due to this weird stubbornness, I still decided to keep going. I kept going further until I actually managed to get to the end, and along the way, I found a few moments that I enjoyed and improved my opinion on it. It made me start to warm up to the franchise, with the whole maybe it's not for me mentality slowly disappearing. What I'm trying to say is that you should push yourself a bit and engage with things that you might not want to, just for the sake of bettering your viewpoints and giving a larger variety of video games their justice. Sure, video games are meant to be fun, but this isn't just for fun, assuming it's also for showing your passion and love for the media through discussion. It's good to expand your palette if it comes to the different existing franchises, and in a lot of cases that might require putting on a little elbow grease. Doing side content when you just wanted to go straight through the main story, trying different playstyles, even trying popular games that might not seem to be in your taste. That's something I think you should do. But at the same time, sometimes you shouldn't. See, this whole video was me describing my own past feelings and thoughts that I had throughout my Oscar-worthy journey, my own past feelings and thoughts that I had throughout my Oscar-worthy journey of figuring out how I feel about game critics. And at the beginning, I've been pretty obsessed with doing things properly, coming up with and following these criteria to make my opinions more valid. I was unsure whenever I played a game in a Discord call or had music playing in the background, because I saw these as distractions, ever so slightly preventing me from having a more authentic experience. The more I thought about these things though, the more unimpactful they started to be for me. As I've said before, following these rules can be beneficial, but at the very end, the way you express yourself after the game's finished is what matters most. If you had similar feelings like these, then I think you should definitely let loose some more. When things are said and done, all you ever need to make a good video game review is just inside your voice. So find a nice balance between letting loose and putting some effort. And thank you very much for your time spent on watching this, and I hope that I managed to say something thought-provoking for you like I intended to. Good day.
This この辺かな